else who wants to come to this particular session. I'm the moderator. I'm Paul Gondek. I'm listed as a visiting research professor in the Department of Chemistry. I don't know any chemistry. I'll explain how your career can get to that point when we come back to me. Before we get started up here, because you're going to hear a lot about us, I'd like to know just a little bit about each of you so we know what our audience is. Just like name, degree, how far along in the program you are.
I'm actually an interesting case. I'm actually a staff member from Drexel University Online, so I'm here to cover
Okay.
this event. But ironically, I am doing a master's in communications, and I am working on my thesis research right now.
Okay.
Unfortunately, it is not at Drexel University, it's at Hopkins. But either way, I really want to learn more about this. So I'm going to cover it and to learn a little bit, so that's my background.
Okay, good, thanks.
Hi, my name is Ryan Racing. I'm actually an undergraduate student.
Okay.
I'm a junior, and my major is custom design. It's the, I don't know if anyone knows about custom design, the custom design major, but it's essentially the major exclusive to the Canonian Honors College, where students who are accepted to the major get to design their own plan of study. So mine just focuses on like arts and some parts of humanities, and just basically combining it together to create an original major for myself.
Okay, neat.
Hello. I just walked in. What are we doing? I thought it would be much more people. Slide in and go unnoticed.
Name, rank, and serial number.
Okay. All right. I'm Andrew Waddell. I'm a part of the College of Nursing and Health and the Creative Arts Therapies Department. So I'm studying my specialty is music therapy. This is my second year, so I'll be graduating in June. God willing, I get the thesis done.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm working with older adults this year, dementia patients, and hospice. So
That's good.
And what degree does that lead to? What is that?
it'll be a Master of the Arts in Music Therapy,
Okay.
and then we have a certification process where we become board certified music therapists, and then we can work in any state in the country. So.
Oh, good. That's good. Transferable. That's great.
Yeah.
I'm Elaine Parentad. I'm a second year PhD student in the School of Education, and I'm specifically looking at arts education in STEM curriculum, but how that kind of cognitively develops students' creativity and critical thinking.
I'm Jessica, also second year PhD student in School of Ed, and my research is on the impact of engineering at lower grades, so teaching engineering to K-8 students and the impact has on their persistence through failure and resiliency.
Okay, thank you. What we'll do is we'll each give a brief introduction, and we're going to go in order of most recent to least recent final degree, so that we sort of work our way up through our careers. So we'll start with Alexa.
And hi everyone, my name is Alexa Bonaci, and currently I'm a postdoctoral research fellow here at Drexel. So I have several degrees from the university. I started here as an undergraduate, and I earned a degree in psychology. So I did a BS-MS program, so it was a 5-year combined bachelor's and master's degree. And then I actually worked for the College of Medicine as a research coordinator for 2 years, working in HIV medicine. And then I returned to Drexel to earn my PhD in clinical psychology. So I just graduated last spring, so in 2016. And I completed a clinical internship at the University of North Carolina in Chapel Hill. So that was in behavioral medicine and women's mental health. So I've been at Drexel for a long time and have done a lot of different things in terms of like during my graduate training, I've done clinical work and research, and also have been an adjunct faculty member. So for my postdoctoral fellowship, I'm doing research in the area of women's reproductive health. I'm actually working at the Mother-Baby Connections Clinic, which is over in Center City. So the music therapy, I'm interested in connecting with you about that because we have the dance movement therapy, we also have art therapy as part of that program, but it's a program for mothers who have postpartum depression or anxiety, and it's meant to be like a comprehensive program for them. It's new, it was just established in the last year or so. So that's a little bit about my background, and it's great to be here and to meet all of you.
Okay, Anthony.
Hi, my name is Anthony Wisniewski. I graduated from Drexel in 2014 with an MBA. And I was actually a Drexel student before that as well, and graduated with a degree in civil and architectural engineering. I don't do that anymore. I spent my undergraduate career trying to figure out what I wanted to do, and it wasn't engineering. But I still love buildings, and I worked as a transportation engineer at Bonaci Associates right across the street. And I decided to leave that field because I was more interested in the dollars and cents and building businesses and organizations and building people than building structures. So I went back to school, got my MBA, concentrated in entrepreneurship and marketing, and I decided to take a job as a contractor, as a consultant with SAP, as an implementation specialist. And so I was helping to support one of their social collaboration tools and working with different organizations to help onboard their employees. Then I moved on from that job to take a great position at the company I'm at now called Therapy Notes. And we are a software development company. And we build software for counselors, therapists, psychologists. We actually got started about 6.5 years ago. The owner had to build the product for his wife, who's a clinical psychologist. So he's a technology guru. He spent his entire career in technology. He's a Drexel grad as well, and he was running his own software development company. And then Therapy Notes took off. He got very, very lucky, and so did I when I joined the team. So we've been growing very quickly, and it's an awesome organization. I manage business strategy, so I'm responsible for growth, and I work very closely with the marketing and the sales teams. And also, since I manage operations as well, because it sounds like a lot, but we're a 37-person company, so it's still very, very small, very entrepreneurial. And we just bought a new office space, and we're moving to Horsham, about 10 times the size of our current space. So a lot to do, and the MBA program really set me up for the career path that I decided to take.
Shabri?
Well, it's really cool that we get to like ping pongs. It's really great that way. So my name is Shabri Parker, and I feel like I'm the only not sciencey person on the panel because I'm the sole lawyer here. My undergrad degree is from Millersville University, and it is in English. And my graduate degree is from Drexel School of Law, where I have obviously a JD from law school. And then I went on to get an LLM, or Master's of Laws in Trial Advocacy, from Temple's School of Law. The Drexel Law School is now developing one, so instead of being in the second law school class, if I had slid in around class 10, I could have got both my degrees from Drexel. But in any event, I practice law at a small law firm called Minty & Fitzpatrick. And in Minty & Fitzpatrick, we are real trial lawyers. And so our breadth of experience includes everything from civil rights and criminal defense litigation to medical malpractice. My practice areas specifically are in civil, family, and estate litigation. My litigation practice includes some civil litigation, from personal injuries to contract disputes and issues like that, through estate planning and drafting, where I draft trust agreements and wills, and I fight with people over wills when they don't like what wills say, and I make them say new things. But my civil practice is the part of my practice that is the most broad, in that it is a broad breadth of litigation, but I also do a lot of business consulting and advising. I have a number of clients who are small businesses, which I help them to get off the ground. I advise them on their contracts. I evaluate and draft their contracts, and I help them to grow their business. So my practice is very dynamic, and my law firm, although small, is one that is full of lawyers like me who have dynamic practices. Anthony and I were talking, and I was saying that the thing that people always ask me all the time, like, oh, you're a lawyer, do you like it, or yikes. I actually had an Uber driver that said, oh, you're a lawyer, well, do you feel like that paid off? Like, it's raining, Uber driver. It's too early in the morning, but it did get me to thinking about about the parts of it that I like and the parts of it that I don't like. And so one of the things that I think you can take away from whatever discipline it is that you find yourself in is what it empowers you to do. So for me, a law degree allows me jokingly to do everything and nothing, but that's actually very true. I can take the skills that I've acquired in my program, whatever program it is that I'm in, I can take those skills and I can apply them to anything. And so for me, that's allowed me to branch off my career in different practice areas, but it's also given me an opportunity to get more involved in other non-pay my bills pieces of the profession, ways that have developed my leadership ability and my social abilities. So if I were to say anything about emerging graduates, it would be that the world is our oyster. You can do whatever you want, and my career is kind of a illustration of that.
Sounds good. Okay. Lisa?
I'm Lisa Dawn, and I think following Shabri's comments in terms of the world's my oyster, my career has gone full circle. I started at St. Joe's, and I'm probably the only non-Drexel person on the panel, but I'll tell you about my affiliation in a second. So my undergrad is from St. Joe's in economics and a minor in Italian. While I was there, I spent some time in Italy on a cultural exchange scholarship as well. After I graduated, I worked for MLR Publishing, which is a division of Hay Management Consultants, and they published Mergers and Acquisitions magazine. While there, I started my graduate degree part-time at Temple for my MBA, and continued. After working there a few years, I felt like, similar to what you said, Chris, it was time to move on, and I sent out 100 resumes to area companies that I thought I would like to work for, and one of them, Conrail, contacted me. A few contacted me, but I didn't. I did actually work with Conrail in market research, and at that point, while I was working there, was offered a graduate assistantship to finish my MBA full-time. So I went to Temple's main campus, and then moved on to Core States Bank, which is no longer, but the subsequent bank now in the area is Wachovia and Wells Fargo. So I worked there initially in a relationship management credit analyst position, and soon moved on to their treasury area, and then after doing a career development session within treasury, I realized I wanted to be in a little more people-oriented field and moved into human resources. It was at the time where a lot of Philadelphia banks, Core States in particular, was buying a lot of banks, so I was on a lot of mergers and acquisitions activity and severance projects. While in that area, I moved where I actually pursued my PHR certification, which is a professional in human resources. After that, I moved on to more regional human resources activities, and also pursued my senior professional in HR certification. And then the roles flipped, and Core States was acquired by then First Union, and our department moved to North Carolina. And my husband and I decided to move out of Philadelphia into the suburbs, and I started as with a small HR consulting firm that operated out of Philadelphia, but we provided a lot of virtual HR activities for small companies that didn't want or have the resources to have an HR person on staff. And then 9/11 happened, and a lot of people faced a lot of downsizing, including my small consulting firm that I worked with. So I went out on my own in for human resources consulting, and I actually did some substitute teaching as well. My children were younger then, and I also pursued a lot of civic and community leadership roles, including being on our board of trustees at our local library. More recently, for the past 2 years, I've been chairperson of the Drexel Family Association. My husband is an alum of Drexel, and our 2 children go here. So I have a 4th-year nursing student, soon to be 5, and also a freshman in the computing and information informatics college. So I think just with my opportunities and education, I think I've made the world my oyster. I wanted to spend time with my children at home, and my education afforded me those choices.
Thank you. Okay. So we have a diverse panel. Just to round it out, as I said, I'm Paul Gondek. What I currently am is a visiting research professor of chemistry and an adjunct professor in the School of Business. So those are somewhat different things. How did I get here? Well, and let me start with, I am a 1974 graduate of Drexel, a member of the Alumni Association Board. You will all be...
Maybe one day if you have a PhD.
Yeah, please, we'd love to have you. You will all, when you complete your degrees, be members of the Alumni Association. It is free. There is no obligation. But we do provide things like networking services, great parties during the alumni weekend, subgroups, things like Drexel Players and Swim and Dive Association and a bunch of other groups that have similar interests that you can get involved in if you're interested. And we'll certainly find ways to put you to work if you are interested in remaining connected to Drexel, won't we, Chris? As we go. So I graduated from Drexel in 1974 in somewhat self-designed kind of situations like yours, except I've spent my first 2 years in physics, decided that wasn't going to work. Transferred into what was then the Psych Soc Anthro program in the College of Humanities and Social Sciences. Neither of those things exist anymore. But at the time, HNSS was trying to figure out what the major should look like, so they basically said, here, take some courses in here and add on whatever you want, and you can get a degree. So it did give me the opportunity to take things like organic chemistry and statistics from that department and neurophysiology, as well as like psychology and sociology courses. And the point of this is that all that eventually came in helpful somewhere along the line, because I've had several oysters in the course of the years since then. From here, because at the time you could not do a PhD in psychology at Drexel, I went to the University of Connecticut where I did a PhD in social psychology. My research was in physiological and cognitive factors in human emotional experience, and I did a concurrent master's in statistics, which all the math I learned in physics was useful for, and which became very important later on, because the next thing I did was a postdoc in psychiatric epidemiology, and I'll sort of try to run through this quickly. There were decisions at various points. If you want to hear about those decisions, call me back to them when we get to the question and answer, because otherwise I'll go on forever. Did a postdoc in psychiatric epidemiology, which essentially became applied statistics in a survey research setting. So guess what? All the stuff I'd already learned somewhere else, because we were looking at the mental health effects of the 3 Mile Island accident on the residents in the area. So I was psychiatric epidemiology. I was in the psych department at the University of Pittsburgh, and that was what I did for a couple of years. From there, I made a left turn and spent 12 years in major corporations doing market research. Again, I was doing primary market research, largely with consumers at the time. It was all the same skill sets that I developed doing something else. The reason for that was that there were no jobs, no PhD level jobs in psychology. The American Psychological Association actually did a study, and if you go back to like American Psychologists in 1980 and look, you'll see that they were afraid they were overtraining graduate level psychologists, and in fact they were. There were 300 new PhDs in social psychology in 1979, and there were 12 academic positions. So we had to find other things to do. So that was how I got a postdoc, and then friends of mine had gone into market research, and they said it's cool, and they pay you a lot more money than they do in academia, and I said, okay, that sounds good to me. Spent the next 12 years in various corporations, first doing market research and then moving into marketing management. We can talk about that decision at some point if you want to. And eventually into general management, because there were reasons for all those. And then decided I'd had enough of large corporations, at least as employers, and spent the rest of my life in consulting, at least the rest of that particular career. For 15 years I worked for my own company, so like a lot of Drexel people, I'm an entrepreneur, where I did research-based marketing consulting. I was also involved in marketing and consulting management, because eventually I joined some larger companies for reasons, again, I can explain if you have a question about those. And I did executive coaching, and did that for the rest of that career, if you want to. It's not really over, but I sort of dialed back on it in the fact that I only do a little bit of consulting now. Now what I do is what I started with. I teach. I have taught new product development in LeBeau, and I teach the consulting courses out there now. you're an undergraduate, but you probably don't want to take this course. So I'm not going to go into too much detail. But it is a case where the students there actually do the consulting, and the faculty do coach the students on how to be consultants, how to work best with your clients, all those kinds of things. So it's very experiential, you know, Drexel's biggest thing, experiential learning. And it gives people a lot of real world experience. And the reason that I'm a visiting research professor in chemistry is that I'm also on a team, an interdisciplinary team that you saw the other day, that is composed of people from arts and sciences, engineering, a couple different engineerings, the School of Education, and me, that is putting together a graduate minor in creativity and teamwork in STEM research, although it doesn't have to be STEM. If you wanted to come and be part of it, you could certainly be part of it. The idea being that graduate students aren't normally taught to work in team situations, and they aren't normally taught how to apply creativity to the work that they're doing. So what we're doing is developing a 2-course minor that you could take that involves that. It will be interdisciplinary, so you will be in teams with people from other schools that you've never met before, that don't speak the same language as you, because you speak engineering and they speak psychology and they speak chemistry and whatever else, and learn to work like that, because once you get your degree, one of the things that's likely to happen to you is you're going to end up in a team like that. And the better you know about how to function in those kinds and be creative in those kinds of environments, the better off you'll be. So, other than that, I sit on some charity boards and, you know, enjoy working with students. So, that's as much as I want to say until you ask questions, but why don't you, at this point, we've done a lot of talking, why don't you ask questions?
So one question I have is, in place of going back to school to either change careers or to change jobs even, what else might you recommend as far as kind of shifting or looking for more abstract ways of using our degrees?
I actually have a suggestion. You don't always want to go back to school for a new thing. Like some skills you had, you feel like, you know, I got this many of these skills, I can get to this thing. What I've been doing and what I've been I've been advising other people to do is to kind of look around at what you think you might want to do. Like, say, I have one friend who, she just finished her master's program in early childhood education, and she's trying to figure out what to do so that she's not a master's level early childhood in the classroom every day. And so I talked to her about curriculum development and core competencies. And so I'm using that as an example to say that you look at related fields, like things that are tangentially related to what you're doing. And I actually Google people that are doing what I think I want to do and look at their resumes, because a lot of them didn't have to go back and pick up a 3rd or 4th degree. A lot of times you can substitute 5 years of school with 5 years of actual experience, having done something, or situational knowledge. Like, there are lots of things that can substitute for what an academic program will provide. And I find that one of the best springboards is to look at other people who are doing what you want to do or something close to it and seeing what their resumes look like.
I think too, it's helpful to have maybe several different resumes based on what you're looking for from an HR standpoint. I would say, like, whether it's coursework you've done or volunteer work or your interest, or maybe you are taking a class, maybe you're not pursuing a degree per se, but maybe a class in something that you're interested in. And I think it's just packaging yourself in for the job. So you see what's required, and then based on your background and your experiences, when you apply for it, you're very clear on why you can do that job.
I would say first, before you start looking at other things, make sure you know yourself, what skills you have, and thoroughly go back. You know, what did you do as a summer job in college? I mean, it may not seem relevant, but for a while when I was doing pharmaceutical market research, I was an oncology expert. I didn't know a whole lot about cancer, but I knew something about organic chemistry and something about neurophysiology, because of the courses I'd taken as an undergraduate. I had enough language that then I could do my homework to get far enough into that area to be able to do it. So, you know, it's like I said, you know, once upon a time I did statistics, and suddenly it becomes relevant every so often along the way, even though that's not exactly what I want to be doing. So it's a good idea to know what you are capable of and have some sense of what you want when you decide then what is it close to where you already are that would make some sense. You know, if you want to wear blue jeans to work every day, it's important that you not go into certain areas like banking where you can't do that. You know, you need to know, I mean, that's at a very gross level, but you need to know those kinds of things about yourself so that when you start thinking about what can I do that isn't what I'm doing now, you know what you can do and what you don't want to do and what you do want to do.
Yeah, I was just going to say too, there's opportunities for internships at various levels too, where you can do it for a temporary period of time, so that adds to your experience level, and also you have an opportunity to see if it's something that you want to change into.
And if you're looking to do an internship, you can't find one, or maybe you need a paid internship and you can't find one. A lot of industries you're gonna jump into it. I know with marketing especially, a lot of designers and a lot of people that work for advertisement agencies aren't really taking. There are no paid internships. You can't find something, ask somebody to shadow. Ask if you can shadow them. Ask if you can come to work with them for a couple of days and learn a little bit more about what they do. That would really go a long way. And just have those conversations with people. And sometimes you have to fail a couple of times before you really figure out what it is you want.
I like to think of it as like I kind of keep asking myself a series of questions. Probably why I'm a good lawyer, because I'm always asking questions. But when I'm trying to figure out, like my career, although relatively short, has been a series of bumping into things that have directed me, but in intentional jumps and in making intentional leaps. One of the kind of core questions that I ask myself are, what do you love about what you're doing? What do you hate about what you're doing? And how could you do it better? So I tend to ask myself those questions. It has helped me to go from, I started my career as a law clerk, and so I didn't like being a judicial clerk, but it was like, okay, well, what do you love about this and what do you hate about it? That's how you pick the next thing. When I started my practice, it was a lot of coursework, but it was a lot of, okay, what did you hate about law school and what did you like about law school? As I grow my practice now, it's the same set of questions, and that will help you to figure out how to move. And once you figured out how to move, you can always put your best foot forward.
You really need to do a great job of selling yourself. And I think every one of us spoke about that in some fashion. Since I manage operations for the company and we're very small, I'm also the interim recruiter and talent development person. So I go to tons and tons of career fairs, and I meet with tons of candidates. I've had this week alone probably about 30 phone interviews already, and we're looking to hire quite a few people. And the best candidates are the ones that have done their homework and that know themselves very well. The better you know yourself, the more you can talk about yourself. I do more, and I had to do that when I was looking for jobs. And now I do a lot more listening than talking, because I remember what it felt like to be in that position. And I feel like a lot of recruiters do, and they're really trying to get to know you as best as they can. So if you're doing your homework, if you're looking at the job description and you're kind of aligning your skills, I mean, don't lie, but be aligning your skills and your experience. Even if you worked in, like I worked in engineering, and project management was something that was transferable over to the business world. And so that's something that I took away from the engineering, the previous engineering employment opportunities, and it's transferable. So work on figuring out how those things align, and really like drive those points home when you're asking to shadow people, and when you're looking for those new opportunities that you don't think, you're just like, I'm never going to get that job. You could, you really could. So.
And if I could put a plug in for something that the alumni office does, or the alumni association does, or maybe a combination, the online networking. Every so often there's online networking managed through, and we get emails about it. But it's set up by area, either by school or sometimes by industry or whatever, and it's all online, so that you can get on there, and I've been on it when students have asked me questions about, what I do and how I got there and that sort of thing. But it's a way to learn about, if you think you want to be in law, go on the law one and ask some questions of people that sign up, because generally there's enough of a background there that you know who else is going to be on that networking site with you, and you can set up, it's also speed networking. It's like 5 minutes or something, if I remember correctly. So it's a chance to type a couple questions, get a few answers, learn a few things, and get off again. But it's a way to learn things in a relatively painless way. If you have some area that you've targeted, you want to know a little bit more about.
Question. So obviously higher education is shifting in terms of, not everybody needs a PhD or a master's degree anymore. So how do you as a professional, since instead of spending years at a time earning another degree to add on to your already degree, what can you do to achieve your goals? Is it through MOOCs? Is it through short bootcamp courses? Is it like, what can you do? Is it certificates? What's the best investment of your time, knowing that industries are always shifting, higher education is becoming even more expensive? And of course, I advocate for people enrolling in Drexel programs, but what can you do as a professional to make sure you're always developing yourself? Because no matter what, everyone's a lifelong learner now. So how do you continuously keep doing that without getting another degree?
So I work in the tech industry, and if you're technical, then you're going to be viewed by how much you know, and the quality. In marketing, there's technical marketing. I do a lot of paid search and search engine optimization, and you can get very, very technical in that field. There are organizations that I belong to, meetup groups. Digital Marketing Suburbia is a great one, and there's tons of organizations out there. Get yourself involved. Talk to subject matter experts. Pick their brain, ask them questions, and learn as much as you possibly can about certain subjects. If you're well versed, if you're very knowledgeable in something, if you can become a thought leader, that'll really help.
I would say additionally, getting involved in professional associations and developments will help you with your own career and educational development. And I say that from the perspective of I'm a lawyer, and so I've got my practice areas. I've got the stuff that's on my desk every day, but the things that are on my desk every day are just a very small portion of all the things that other people are dealing with. And by being engaged in my professional trade organizations, which are predominantly bar associations, I've got a bar association that identifies with my ethnic needs. Like I was the past president of the Barristers, which is the Black Lawyers Association. I'm on a few of the executive committees for the Philadelphia Bar Association, and I also am involved in things with my sorority and with my law school. And I'm saying these things not because they're just resume fluffers, but because by engaging myself in those areas, I picked up skills that I didn't have or would not have been exposed to because they were beyond the confines of my desk and were not necessarily, they were intrinsically a part of some larger program. And right, I already got an LLM, and I'm not getting any more degrees. I don't need any more letters behind my name or any more zeros on my student loan balance. I don't need it. So, because I don't need to add another dollar to that balance, I developed myself. I've raised my profile. I've continued my education, both in the required continuing legal education courses, but in putting on programs that address topics that are related to what I'm doing, but beyond the scope of what I'm doing. It establishes me as a leader, as someone who knows it, as someone who is familiar with this in this particular area. So just doing things, exposing yourself to other parts of your profession will in turn enrich you in ways that you couldn't see. I practice law. I started a practice that is very dynamic because it was born out of necessity. But it led me to create my own, which led me to be an adjunct at Drexel, which is why I'm at this table today. So none of that was intentional. I didn't do it on purpose. I didn't have a plan. But by putting myself out there, I raised my profile, I learned some stuff, and I get the benefit of people thinking I know things that I don't yet know. But I don't figure them out.
I think just the networking too that comes from being part of your area of expertise, if there are ongoing courses that you could take that are from like professional associations that are in your particular area, and just social networking within your area or just in your community. I think that relationship building goes a long way. I do think adding education is helpful, but it's not always possible. Maybe to your point, it's not always necessary. So I think just putting yourself out there and keeping up with your relationships as well with your faculty members that you've worked with and your peers. And just even if they go into other areas, keeping up lunch dates or what have you, and keeping your area of expertise always growing.
Yeah, not to be the one to monopolize, but consistency. Like
Right.
being consistent in those relationships and being dependable in those social settings will lend you some credibility that you might not even deserve yet, or that you do and that you just weren't getting because people don't just give you the benefit of the doubt.
As when I earned my MBA several years ago, and I still keep in touch with the chairperson of my department. We get together once or twice a year for lunch. He spends half the year in Texas, and when he's back in town, we still have lunch together, and we, talk both academic and non-academic things. We've become friends. So I think that has helped me through the progression of my career, even to have somewhat of a mentor still in my life.
One of the things I'll just add to that, I mean, my field is a little bit different in that you need a PhD in order to be like a clinical psychologist in an academic kind of setting, but I think, to your point about what do you really want to do with that degree, and maybe you can get a social work degree if you really want to do therapy, or if you want to. So I think clarifying at the outset kind of what you want to do, and also one of the things that I tried to do during my training was to stay really broad. I think there's a lot of pressure in academia to specialize, and you kind of have to balance it, but at the same time, I mean, I've done a lot of clinical training in different areas so that when I am looking for a job, anything potentially that might be like under the job description, I can say, well, I have done that. And even if it only was for a couple months, a part of a rotation or something, I can still apply it. And so speak to it, right, rather than, my degree, my concentration is in health psychology, well, I don't need to go back and get a neuropsych degree, but I've had a little bit of neuropsych training that I can then speak to. So that's kind of how I'm trying to navigate that. But it's a good question.
I think I heard the word mentor from at least one, maybe more people. The way I got into consulting was after 12 years in corporate life, I knew I was disgusted with major corporations. I knew I had a set of skills, and I thought maybe I'd like to be a consultant, but I have no idea how to do this. Something else I did here and done since was I sing in small ensembles, and I was actually singing in a barbershop chorus. And we're on a break.
It's so interesting.
We're on a break
Just
between
slip
the
that in there.
That's something that you can just start to do.
Actually, yeah, you can. They're desperate, so if you can sing, go right ahead. But the guy next, I was talking to the guy next to me during a break, and he said, "Well, I run a small, 2-person consulting company. Come talk to me." And then when we talked, he said, "It's not." I said, "I really want to go out on my own." He said, "I understand that," but he said, "I can help you not make all the mistakes I made." Sort of mentor you into this. I mean, the first thing he did was hand me their P&L and say, "This is how your P&L should be structured." I went, "Oh, okay." And he went with me on my first few scope calls, my first few sales calls, helped me structure my initial proposals and stuff. We did eventually do some work together down the road when we had a chance, although we were in very, very different fields. But finding somebody who you can talk to about this and who might be able to provide you with the education for free that otherwise it would take you a bit to get is invaluable. Yeah. So and you can find people like that in the oddest places. Find the original stories.
if I could just actually jump in to echo some aggregate data of what you guys have all been saying. To those of you that I didn't meet beforehand, my name is Chris Bertoni. I work over with the Alumni Relations Office. And I'm a Drexel alum myself. But I just think it's really interesting as you guys talk about using some of those professional networks and groups, because historically from our office where we sit, some of the strongest alumni affinities that we saw, or most active groups, were college-based. So specifically the College of Engineering, the College of Computing and Informatics, or the business school. And that's actually been a real shift very quickly in the last few years, that we're not seeing new leadership come into those groups as much as they're staking out and forming them more around industries. So in the last year alone, groups like real estate, hospitality, architecture, marketing, where they're not making the kind of parameters of their membership or participation about what school here did your degree come from, but they're more concerned with where are you now? You know, are you tied to education? Are you affiliated with psychology and that? And I think this panel kind of has echoed, and something I heard and seen, that you know, you may start with one degree, but kind of recognizing those groups. And that's something to the point of not increasing the student debt in those pieces. Alumni Association membership, as Paul mentioned, it's free. You paid for it already. You did the hard work for it. So why, if you put the work in, why not take out the benefits too? So just make a plug or an acknowledgement.
A lot of you mentioned marketing yourself, and I know a lot of you have jobs that you weren't necessarily getting your degree for. So I guess my question is, I'm getting a PhD in education, but I don't really have a desire to go to academia, go into that field. So my question is, how do you market a degree that you have for a job that you don't need that degree for? I guess is my question. Like, how do you market your skills that you've gained from the experience to a maybe non-traditional job for a PhD?
Well,
you understand the question?
Yeah.
Okay.
Can I ask you, what are you looking to do?
I don't know.
Oh, you're not sure? Yeah.
I mean, and I also have another question, like, explore your options. I guess my question, like, how do you find maybe non-traditional jobs or things of that nature? Like, I know you mentioned, like, you know, networking, things like that.
Yeah.
I think
It's like a twofold question.
which Drexel may be able to help you with, and doing a career assessment, like there's inventories that you can take about your skill sets and your interests.
I mean, I do have like some idea, I just, and it's like, I'm keeping it broad, but.
Okay, so then once you understand what you like to do and what your strengths are, and then you would start talking to people in those fields. As Shabri mentioned, look at people's resumes or, you know, what they've done or companies they've
well, I guess
worked
the question is more like, how do you, like, on your cover letter, your resume, or initial contact, like, how do you market all your degrees in a way? Because like, I don't think I need more.
But you
Do
do
you know
need
what I
more.
mean?
So
Like,
basically,
like,
the way you
with the
market
skill
it,
set, yeah.
the way you're marketing it is that you have to, when you've picked an area that is so broad that you can do anything or nothing, and when you are applying for a broad spectrum of things, you have to be very, very intentional. Like you don't have the luxury of a form cover letter. You don't have the luxury of a form resume. Because you don't want to do what people who get your degree traditionally do, you can't do what they've traditionally done.
Right.
So you've got to be very intentional. So you're getting a PhD in education, but let's say you want to do marketing or something. Your cover letter is going to speak specifically to the marketing skills you got, the things that you've done, the places that you've worked. Like my cover letters, right? I'm a lawyer, and a lot of people call me a family lawyer. Some people call me a divorce lawyer. It's the 30% of my practice, but people might call me a divorce lawyer. But when I'm applying to be a professor at a law school, when I'm applying to be a recruiter somewhere, when I'm trying to sell someone on my consulting, I don't talk to them about how many family law agreements I worked out. But I do talk to them about my ability to structure and manage a contract that can cover anything from the most intimate of your personal life to a huge deal that's going to cost you a bunch of money. So you want to be able to very articulately explain why it is that your skills, your interesting dynamic background that is non-traditional fits this thing. And the flip side to that is that most people who have non-traditional careers are entrepreneurs. And it is frustrating for many people to think of themselves as being like, oh crap, I got all this debt, and I got all this education, I got all these degrees, but now I've got to do my own job, I've got to do my own thing. When I graduated from law school, my parents and my grandparents were all like, I want you to start your own practice. And I'm like, hell no, not gonna happen. No, like just absolutely not doing it. And 3 years later, when I was like, okay, so I'm quitting my job to do my practice full time, they were all like, what? And it was because out of circumstance, sometimes you can't find the job that you want because it doesn't exist, and it's your job to create it because you dreamed it up. And so other times you dream it up, but the way that the person who got it, the person who's doing it now, the way they got it is, you can't do that. For whatever, you just can't do what they did. You have to do what you're doing. And so a lot of it becomes pull yourself up, figure it out, be very entrepreneurial, be very enterprising to find ways to develop the skills that you want to have.
Yeah, for my postdoc, that's basically what I did is I pieced together a number of different experiences. So I knew I wanted to work in this Mother Baby Connections program, but that was not going to pay enough money. So I said, okay, well, let me get an adjunct faculty position. I worked with this other organization planning this event, and I have a PhD in psychology. I don't do event planning, but if you have a PhD, you're very competent, and you can. I mean, people are going to respect that, and you can plan an event. So the point is, I think you're kind of trying to make it work, and I wasn't afraid to approach people and just to ask for different experiences that I wanted, and just to kind of see what would happen. So I don't think that your degree is going to be a negative.
Yeah, and I should have prefaced it by saying I do want to stay in the field of education. I'm not trying to become a lawyer or go into marketing. I just don't want to go into academia.
No, you don't want to be a professor.
School. There is a whole realm of education that, the business side, I guess, it's just kind of a dirty word. Education, entrepreneurship is
you could be a really dope curriculum developer. You could be a really dope curriculum developer. Charter schools are booming, and so these charter schools are I do another part of my civil litigation is charter school litigation, right? So we do governance, we do litigation, we do all of that, and a lot of these schools are governed by there are 6 curriculum companies in the country that all run all thousands of these schools, and with the education race, there might be something to be desired about the curriculum development. So that might be an area that you want to go into. It gives you business, it gives you education, it gives you PhD, it gives you freedom. That might be something that you want to look into. So you just got to kind of think about things. They say think outside the box, but it's kind of like you have to ignore the box. You have to the box doesn't exist.
I think you have to take the description that they have if there's a particular job you're interested in and just very eloquently say how you meet their needs, because they may be cut off when they see PhD in education and say, oh, she'll never want this. But you have to tell them why your skill set meets what they need, and how your background complements what they need. And so I do think if you can either do a cover letter, or in some cases maybe even take the hiring person out for coffee to show them how you do meet their needs, and that you're trying to go off onto a different tangent than what traditional people do with a PhD in education. So
cover letters are really going to help you convince them to that. And what I've seen other people do is put summaries on their resume and objectives and what it is they're looking for at the top of the resume. Because if I read that first, usually I'm going to, and then I look at your educational experience and your background, I'm like, man, these things don't really align, but the summary tells me exactly what it is you want to do. That goes a long way. And if you're looking for the terminology, if you're looking for the vocabulary, you're trying to see, well, wow, I did this, but how do I make this sound like they want to hear? Well, just look at the job description and see what words they use. Some things are synonymous.
Yes,
exactly.
Yes, actually. It seems so counterintuitive. Yes, use their words back. It's how she knows. That's the thing.
How do you know?
And the other
We're not taking exams.
What was that word you guys taught me? Quantum dot. What was that quantum dot thing y'all told me earlier? Slide that word in there. She knows.
I think we only have a couple minutes left, and we have one more question in the back. So.
Yeah, I've been stewing the whole time. So I'm sort of the opposite. Like I'm very specific music therapy. My question is sort of along the lines of the entrepreneurial spirit, maybe the marketing piece. So there's a lot of music therapists in the Northeast. I'm from the South, so contemplating, trying to figure out, do I stay in an area where there might be more opportunity like this area where there are more jobs, or can I forge ahead and like create my, there's a lot of people that have their own music therapy businesses. They've gone down to areas where there's not as many people working. So I don't know, you've kind of mentioned, trying to find a mentor, trying to get those networks, I don't know if anybody's like forged ahead in a space like that where you're kind of working as the only person doing your thing. There's 34 music therapists in South Carolina where I'm from. There's more than 500 in Pennsylvania. So just to put that into perspective. If I were to forge ahead, are there resources for somebody like that where you're kind of building something on your own? Marketing obviously would come into effect. I don't know, you know what I'm saying? Like I'm trying to really figure out what I might want to do.
You're still a student, right?
I'm graduating in a month.
Okay, so you still have access to Drexel's library and the network,
yeah.
LexisNexis, and iBiz, and all of the resources. I mean, you can
I don't know what any of that is.
You go to the library and tell them exactly what it is you're looking at. I'm looking to learn more about these markets and these industries.
Okay.
And if you do the market research, you get access to that information, ask those questions. That'll help you determine whether or not there's a need, right? So if you want to go, if you don't want to stay in PA and you do want to go back home, and you're trying to figure out whether or not people do need the service, well, call a couple of practices up and ask how busy are they. How many patients do you see a week? Do you call them patients? Do you call them clients? Mm-hmm. Right, in music therapy. So, see. I
think a lot of it is also education. Like a lot of people might not even know anything about what we do.
Yeah.
So it would be going into a market and like maybe going to a hospital system and saying, "This is what I do. This is how I can help reduce your costs. This is blah, blah, and give them a presentation, but then you're just like the only one. You're like, hey, this
how do you get paid for?
Do what?
How do you get paid for?
There's a lot of money that can come through Medicare and a Medicaid, but that's if you have the people that can bill for it, and you have to have you have to be a licensed professional counselor, which we can become after 2 years of working with a supervisor and getting those hours.
So I'm sorry.
I was going to say, in areas like yours,
there's a lot of private pay as well. Yeah,
that's really important.
It can be a lot of different ways.
So I would think that if you're saying that you need 2 years of experience before you get board certified and before you can do those things, I would think my suggestion would be that you start your career, your first job, you start your career in a music therapy space. Because sometimes we get frustrated or we get scared off by a saturated market. And so we think, like in South Carolina, there might only be 34 because they might only have a use for 34. Where in Philadelphia or Pennsylvania, you might have 500, but you need 1,000. Or you might only need 400 and there's still 500 of them. And so there's a bit of apprehension that comes with approaching a saturated market. And I think that there's something to be said about studying what you're getting yourself into from the comfort of payroll. And so you don't want to be the guy from The Pursuit of Happiness walking around with the bone density scanner that you're trying to convince people that they need and that they have to pay you for it, right? So you don't want to be that person. But also the flip side of that is that as an attorney, I graduated from law school into a market where they were closing law firms. There were 10 times more lawyers in the city than were necessary. And people always still say that there are still too many lawyers. My brand of lawyering is different, and that is how it works for me. So as a music therapist, your brand of it is different. Like, a part of my brand of lawyering is that lawyers don't look like this. And I'm not talking about the color of my skin, I'm really talking about the color of my jacket and the color of my hair, actually. Right? Everything, they don't, so I'm bringing you something unique. I am giving you something that you need because you haven't seen it before, and so I'm going to be able to transition you. And so that's something, that's a skill, that's a perspective that you gain after you've had some hands-on experience, so you can be like, they do it this way, but I'm going to do it that way. So I would encourage you to get your feet wet on somebody else, get your training ground on somebody else's dime, and then brand it yourself. You can do it however you want to, and just kill it.
It's hard to think when you're hungry.
Yeah.
Even, as I said, I started my own consulting firm, but I took a package from the company I left because they were trying to clear out middle management in a number of different areas. And most people just went on, some took the money and went on to a job in another company like the one we were just left. I had 6 months, and I had 2 small children and a wife who wanted to stay home with the children and not go get employed. So I had 6 months, and then I had to get a real job if I didn't start a consulting business. But we were breaking even on a monthly basis by 4 and on a yearly basis by the end of the first 12 months, and we never looked back. But if I hadn't had that, I wouldn't have been able to go because I had a family. So
I think one thing we haven't mentioned at all, and maybe you all, it's understood, or maybe none of you are aware, but I still do recruiting, and one of the companies that I work with still use LinkedIn. So no matter what your field, so you put down, especially in the summary where recruiters and other potential employers are looking, what you're looking for, and then you start trying to link in with people in your profession, whether they're in the South or up here, and that is a wonderful resource to, whether it's social or professional. I mean, LinkedIn is primarily on the professional end, and you could start linking in potentially with people that you don't know, but you've heard of them in your particular profession or in academia or what have you, and then you start that rolling, and those buzzwords are up there, and when they're looking for someone, I'm still approached by people looking to hire me from just by being on LinkedIn, and people, potential employers near and far will look there.
Yeah, and I was going to say not just music therapists, but go to psychologists in South Carolina. I mean, as I mentioned in the beginning, like we work with creative arts therapists, and I think that's where the future of the field is going, is collaborative care. So social workers and creative arts therapists and psychologists and psychiatrists. So you could potentially be looped in with those people in South Carolina as
Complementary
well.
practices.
Yeah.
Start a giant practice.
Yeah.
It doesn't even have to be giant, it can just be broad. Like, you can still be like an operation, but it's just like, I know this and this and that. So I've got, one of my Twitter bio says, have a question, I've probably got an answer. Because quite simply, that's really what it is. Like, I can't tell you where it's going to come from or what it's going to be about, but you have a question, I probably have an answer.
We have about 8,000 practices that we work with all over the country, and a little over 25,000 users. So if you want to connect with somebody, I have quite a few people in South Carolina. One in particular that rings a bell. His name's Rob Reinhardt. He's very well known. He runs a practice, a website called Tame Your Practice. He actually does electronic medical records and practice management software reviews, right? So we're on his website, and don't tell anybody, but he uses therapy notes, right? So, but he's not going to pitch that because he's offering another service, right? But if you wanted to connect with people like that, even back to LinkedIn, you pop a couple of keywords in there, and you know, you get a spitting image of what you're looking for. And then LinkedIn does a really nice thing by telling you, here's some other people that are very similar to these. So you can get very far that way.
I say put yourself out there for 500 vibes. I feel like that just worked out. Gotta put yourself out there, gotta ask questions.
So I think it looks like the next tech crew's coming in, so it must be time for us to finish up, but we're 10 minutes over anyway. First of all, thank you all for coming. It was a very interesting conversation for me, I hope it was for you. And thank you to, this is quite a set of panelists. I think they did an excellent job.
Thank you for being our great.
Yes, you are a great moderator. Thanks, guys.